It's not often that I get the chance to talk, to interview, to have a chat with a knife maker of the quality of Miguel Barbudo from Spain. How you doing, guys? Professor EDC with another BLADE-OSOPHY Sunday, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the chat that I had with Miguel Barbudo this last Wednesday in Instagram. Unfortunately, the audio on the side of Miguel is rather low, but you can listen to it. Well, if you know Spanish. But anyways, I'm going to sum up here like the most important points and let you know a little bit about who this wonderful knife maker is. I've got some pieces out here that will relate to the topic, to the most important topic that I think that we touched upon. Miguel Barbudo is a second-generation blacksmith, and he learned his trade, of course, from his father, and went on to formally study the trades at the School of Traditional Blacksmithing and Restoration of the Monastery of San Lorenzo in Spain. So the trade becomes a craft, and we start seeing an evolution there, at least in his story. In 2015, he inaugurates his brand and webpage. But then the next year, he loses most of his workshop in a fire, in an accident fire. And guess what? Well, he is helped by his knife community to get back on his feet. By buying off knives and by donations, and as we spoke, he very thankfully appreciated the help of his knife community back in 2016. He discovered his knife making path through the request of a friend, and I've heard this story a few times. But a friend of his, a hunter, asked him to make him a knife, and so he did. And that's where he discovered his knife-making path. He was the first Spanish participant in Forge and Fire Latin America, and won a second place. Now, if you ask me, without any other intention, I think he was, at least he was my pick to win, but he came in second. One of the most important things that we spoke about, and that we are going to keep on talking about throughout various topics, is creativity and identity. And these are topics that are of utmost importance, at least for me. He's a very Spanish in everything that I read from him, in every picture that I saw from him, it all speaks to me about Spain. The food, the style of the knives, some of the materials, like the horn from bulls from Lydia, to music, flamenco, and phrases taken from that. He's a very interesting person. Not only that, but I have found a uniqueness in his craftsmanship. His knife making is influenced or inspired by the very passionate and rich tradition of Spanish cutlery, with new materials and also international styles. We'll see this all over his design language. His pieces are both functional and original, and not only that, but of great quality. They have an identity that cuts and lasts. Some of his models, the Macho Riojano, the Magallanes, or the Cigar Cutter, if you haven't seen his work, go and check him out on Instagram. This cigar cutter was a special request of an important tobacco house in Spain, if I remember correctly. And but the Magallanes, as he called it, cuts is a friction folder, a small friction folder that, when folded, cuts the cigar, but at the same time is I found it to be a very interesting and very functional EDC knife, or EDC folder rather. Also, one of my favorites is the Balmis, which is a folding knife with a long what is it? Is it more of a swayback or of a... Yeah, I think it's more of a swayback, but it's a long, slim, and clean folder, as well as a totally different one, but a very strong Spanish influence from the Navaja, which is the Malagueña. Love that. And of course the more traditional víbora, which it translated would be snake, the víbora navaja, which is an Albacetenian style navaja, the more popular navaja or blade folder that in the speaking English world is more known, that navaja. The Blocao Salamandra, but he's very typical, and one of his favorites would be the Macho Riojano. And when asked about his designs, he's a very simple man, likes and lives outside of Madrid, in the outskirts, more of a horse person, a mountain person, and more, how can I put it? The resulting of all of these elements and his interest in history, in 18th and 19th century history, they result in pieces with substance and identity. Now, this is a very important topic for me, because I always try to differentiate that from production folders and production knives. Not that there is anything wrong with a production knife. I love each and every one of mine, and of course each and every one of mine and of all production knives are designed up to some standards that goes depending on the tier, of course, the price and materials and companies. But at least for me, trying to evolve in my collecting, this has become more than a hobby, but rather of my deeper understanding or deeper collecting, it's something that I really take into consideration, the craft versus the art, and a trade that evolved into a craft, and that craft is evolving into something else, and perhaps it will evolve into an art. And that's what I see in Miguel's work, that evolution, that step by step, and how we spoke about, this is all the sum up of what we spoke, what I'm saying right here, and how sometimes things are named art object or functional art, and to some point that's understandable, to some point. But then on the other hand, that's also an excuse to elevate the prices on these objects. We may talk about knives, we may talk about folders, we may talk about other things, but it is also used, degraded for other uses. The same as a craft. A craft. Some knife makers use the excuse, use the excuse of being a craft to not give the optimum quality. And so, as you can see, it's neither one nor the other, not using either labels of art or craftsmanship to excuse anything, to excuse a high price or to excuse a job not perfectly done. So that's something that he really pays a lot of attention to. And he, in his words, he mentions, I'd rather have a beautiful functional object than a beautiful not functional object. And that goes without saying, doesn't it? I mean, I found the phrase just fantastic, and really sticking to the spirit of these tools, of these objects that are knives and folders. He also, I asked him about about his inspiration and about the knives, because they're very, if you haven't seen them, they're very aggressive clip points in most cases. And I asked him about that, and he mentioned that Hispanic blades, and Hispanic were taken into consideration from Spain to the Hispanic Latin America, and how Hispanic blades and knives are very straightforward. That's in his own words. They were and are for defense and for a defensive use and an offensive use. As much as they were used as knives, used in a ranch, used on animals for hunting, and then for skinning, and at the same time they were clearly weapons, because when coming down, and here we're talking about designs from the highlands in Spain, and so when the Highlanders came down to towns and they sold lambs or cattle, any type of cattle, when they went back home with the money, they had to defend themselves and protect their money. And of course, the knives they used are very symbolic of that. And yes, I do have some notes because it was just a fantastic chat, and I wanted to try to share with you as much as possible. The cut tip, where can I, let me see, where can I think here. The cut tip, or the tip cutoff, now named clip point, is a very Hispanic blade, and this made sense to me thinking a little bit about it, since if we look at Europe, Europe has a much longer history in battles, in wars, than we have in America, in the whole America, North America, Central America, and South America. And so their blacksmithing goes way back than the blacksmithing and knife making here in America, in the Americas. And it all added up, and I was able to kind of get a grip of that and understand what he was saying about the clip point, that its origin is rather Hispanic blade. And at the same time, you know, talking about the origins, talking about the Spanish, the Hispanic origins of the highlands, for example, in Spain, and that knives were considered a weapon, not just a tool. Now we name them tools to try to follow the rules of whether we talk about YouTube, whether we talk about Instagram or whatever social media. They are what they are, and yes, they're also tools, but in that sense, when you look at his blades, you do get a sense of that's not just a tool, that is a weapon. And at that, they are beautiful pieces, each and every one of them. I can't say there isn't one that I do not like, and that's rare, at least in me. And when talking about creativity and innovation, he speaks about going back to the roots, to his Spanish roots, going back to what was used in the past, to those type of lines, and letting all that mix with in his mind, with materials, with his preferences, and then just trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to land that, trying to impress that in an object. So he's trying to share, to communicate an idea, which is really what artists try to do, isn't it? And that's where we come to a very a breaking point in innovation and creativity, because we may have production knives, we may have some collaborations that are mercantile collaborations and different labels, and that's okay. But what I want to make a difference here is about these type of creativity, the type of creativity that I'm seeing in Miguel Barbudo, where if you base your models in what the market says, in what people want, that's more of a that's more of a production kind of identity, not identity, but design. Identity, I give that label to something that has more to it, and it's very different than creating your own design, than a generic or than for a generic or just an economic benefit, again, which is okay. I find this really different than a Bark River. And when we talk about both of them are great, I love both of them, but where can we see a more simple, a more repetitive design? Well, in knives like this, right? In folders like this. You know, if you've been following me for some time, you know that I love the rat. But it's very, very different. We would have to talk about Elijah Isham, the late Elijah Isham, rest in peace, and his designs. And how a lot of his designs are just true creativity, just beyond the economic benefit, beyond any generic design. This is a language, and so that's what I found in Miguel Barbudo's pieces, when he speaks about his identity and what he's trying to do, and he mentions the cultural lines, and that's, we gotta take a look at the different periods of time about in Spain, for example, or whatever the culture is, and then start playing with materials and with the innovations that we have seen before and are seeing nowadays with different locking mechanisms, right? And different and wonderful steels, and also techniques to have a look at the San Mai and the way Miguel treats his steels. And okay, now I can't read. Anyways, it was a pleasure chatting with Miguel, and I will have him back after perhaps after the Madrid show, and also after Blade Show. He will be, guys, he will be at Blade Show Atlanta 2023, and go take a look at his folders and knives. They are really fantastic and unique, authentic. When we talk about custom knives, and we sometimes mention that a handmade knife, it's not just a handmade knife. It has a spirit behind it. It has something more to it, right? We may love our production knives, but then something comes along that has more to it. That part of the spirit of that knife maker is impressed or impregnated in that single piece, or in that batch of pieces that knife maker was able to create while living. And we don't have many of those nowadays, and perhaps, and I do believe so, it is a gift, and not all of us have that gift. On the other side, there are many of us that can be educated into it, but a gift is a gift, and in that sense I believe that not all men are created equal. And so what do you guys think? Have a look at Miguel's work and let me know. And if you do, say hello on my behalf. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Professor EDC out.